Okay, some experiments so that we can start getting a real sense and experience of the fact that our mystical brain, our right brain, is there working all the time, whether we notice it or not. And of course, the mystical experience, the spiritual training, spiritual path is about learning to be aware of this part of ourselves and acknowledging it in ourselves. So here we go. We're going to do a couple of very simple exercises. Exercise number 1. Where is your spatula? You're like, wait, first of all, that's not what I expected. Second of all, no matter what you were thinking, I bet you just kind of know where your spatula is. Maybe you have a whole bunch of spatulas and saw them all, but I bet you didn't think, oh, it's in the third drawer over from the right, or oh, it's sitting on top of my counter in a ceramic pot. I mean, you didn't think those thoughts. You just knew where your spatula is. How do you know that? You didn't have to think about it. It kind of just, I said the word and the picture just came up. It's because that part of your brain that does that, and that is the mystical brain. Now kind of feel it. Feel that part of you that just found your spatula. There's a very different feel to that. Now feel the part of your brain that can think about a spatula. Feels very different, doesn't it? The difference, the real big difference is that thinking about a spatula comes and goes. And so we kind of tend to think that everything about our brain experience just comes and goes on a timeline like that. But go back and feel that part of your brain that just knew where the spatula is. You didn't have to wait for it to come. It was just always right there. It was just sitting right there. It just knows where the spatula is. It doesn't come and go. So that's kind of what we want to see in the mystical experience, that it's always there. You can be happy, it's still there. You can be sad, it's there. You can be thinking about something completely different. Think about what's very different than a spatula. Your cat. Think about your cat. So you can think about your cat, but your knowing about the spatula is still there. All it took was just the phew to bring it up. Okay, here's another one. Another little experience that always uses your right brain. So you're driving along in your car and you go to the grocery store and you see a parking spot. You know, the 2 lines sticking out. You take your car, you take your wheel, and you're able to just drive into this parking lot, into the parking space. How are you able to do that? You weren't able to do that when you first started driving, right? It was really hard, just think of all the things that you had to do just to pull into that space. You had to turn your wheel just exactly right. You had to picture, you don't just turn crooked in, you have to come out almost almost feels like you're almost going past it, and then you turn and you go in because you have to pivot on your back wheels and then just go straight in. And while you're doing that, you also have to be working your feet. Maybe you need a little bit of gas, but then when you come into the end, you have to boom, stop. So just think of all those things that you did just to pull into the parking space. All of that is your right brain. And yes, it can be trained. You weren't born knowing where your spatula is. I mean, 7 years ago, remember we were talking about how our cells change every 7 years. Well, 7 years ago, was your spatula in the exact same spot? Maybe not. So things can change and it can learn, but that beingness of the left brain is always there. You don't have to, it's like you're driving along, you have to go, wait a second, I got to pull into a parking spot. Let me access this part of myself first. No, it's always there. It's just sitting there. It's ready to go. So that's how integrated your brain always is. Your experience of it, your consciousness of it can be greater or less. And just think about it. Now that you've seen that, those two little experiences, because they have something to do with our real lives. It's not some philosophy from thousands of years ago. But now that you've seen that, you never unsee it. Like, here's another one, and this is better for people who are older. But so if you're older, do you remember that moment when the first spaceship went out into space and they took a picture of the Earth and they beamed that picture back? That picture literally changed consciousness of everyone on the whole planet because we had never seen ourselves before. And so, do you remember that moment? You can never unsee it. And it's going to be the same for anyone who wasn't born yet at the time that happened. But you've seen that picture. You've seen the picture when I mentioned it. You knew exactly what I was talking about. And we can never unsee ourselves as a blue planet, what we look like from space. So these things, they're always there. Once you see it, it's kind of like permanent like that.